Juliette covers 424 floors in one day. That number comes straight out of Season 3. Level 95 up to 144, back down to 19, up again to 144, then down to 19 a second time. Stack those trips together and she crosses almost 3 full heights of the silo before the day ends, all while stopping to talk to people, dodge Camille, and carry an entire episode of plot on her back. Now put that next to Glenda. Billings and Hank found footage placing her near the mines and somewhere far across the silo inside a window that should have made the trip physically impossible, and the investigation treated that gap as damning. Same stairs, same rules. Glenda gets question marks. Juliette gets a soundtrack. This isn't a one-off. Season 1 already gave Juliette a shortcut through the trash chute, dropping her from around level 22 to level 126. That's over 100 levels of ladder covered in a sequence that barely registers as effort. Her escape near the end of the season did something similar to the camera network. Feeds went dark floor by floor as she moved, fast enough that she would have needed to sprint between cameras and destroy them by hand, while also outrunning armed men on the exact same stairs. Two things can't both be true. Either the cameras were failing for some other reason, or Juliette was moving at a speed the show has told us repeatedly no human can sustain on those stairs. Some of this comes down to production reality rather than story logic. Production designer Gavin Bouquet gave part of the answer years before Season 3 even existed. His team never built a 144-level silo. They built 2 levels inside a converted storage facility and used one connecting staircase, wide enough for the camera to follow characters continuously from balcony to balcony. Anything further than that got filled in with visual effect. A fan breakdown titled "Silo Size Matters" Revisited ran the real math on top of that. Each level sits at around 10 meters. The show's staircase is wide enough for several people across, and every level takes 3 full turns to climb. In Hugh Howey's original books, the stairs are only wide enough for 2 people walking side by side, and crossing the full silo takes a couple of days, not a single afternoon. The show compressed that on purpose, because a series that makes you sit through 2 real days of stair climbing between every plot beat doesn't get renewed for 4 seasons. That production reality accounts for part of the pattern, but Glenda's case doesn't fit inside it. If travel time bends whenever the story needs it to, the show can't also use travel time as evidence against one specific character without the audience noticing the double standard, and enough of the audience has noticed. There's a theory floating around fan discussion that tries to patch this from the inside. No elevators exist because the people who built the silo wanted travel to stay slow and expensive on purpose, a built-in way to keep separate levels from organizing against each other. It fits everything else Silo is about. Nothing in the show states it outright, but it's the kind of read that makes the politics of the staircase feel intentional rather than accidental, even when specific characters keep breaking the rule the design is supposed to enforce. Widen the lens past people and the problem gets worse, because those same stairs carry everything else the silo needs to. 10,000 residents need food, medical supplies, replacement parts, and furniture delivered somewhere, every day. And the only system we ever see doing that job is porters carrying what they can manage by hand. No freight elevator, no cargo system. A medical emergency dozens of levels from care means carrying a person up or down flight after flight, with a stretcher crew slowing at every landing. Season 2 makes the bottleneck literal when the rebellion damages and blocks sections of the staircase. Mechanical gets isolated, farms become harder to reach. Then the story moves past it, and characters resume long-distance travel like the staircase was never touched. When structural damage to the only transport route in an underground city should keep causing shortages long after the fighting stops. Walker's arc runs into a smaller version of the same issue. Decades spent barely leaving the workshop, followed by real physical exertion across serious distances, is a strong character beat that skips past what that kind of prolonged isolation does to a body. Power has its own version of this problem, and it might be the hardest one to explain away. During the season, one repair, Mechanical opened the generator, pulled the damaged turbine blades, reshaped them by hand with basic tools, and got it running again. Those blades spin at extreme speed. Small differences in shape or weight at that speed should be catastrophic, and the show treats a hand-ground repair job as good enough to trust with almost every life in the silo. Nearly everything runs off that one generator. Farms, pumps, lighting, the systems keeping 10,000 people alive. Then Season 3 revealed a second line running in from Silo 1. Proof that whoever designed this system knew exactly how to build redundancy. They built it anyway, kept it secret, and routed it to the politically important part of the silo while leaving farms, pumps, and everyone else sitting on one massive point of failure. Keeping that line hidden from mechanical, specifically, is the part that's hardest to accept. These are the people who've spent generations maintaining the silo's machinery. A power line strong enough to keep the whole structure alive running through their territory without becoming common knowledge among the engineers responsible for everything else. Electrical asks a lot of the audience. Lucas found pieces of that hidden infrastructure by digging near the mines, which created its own design contradiction. The same authority that wants people nowhere near the mines also sends convicted workers underground with tools and tells them to dig. Some of what's buried down there connects to the safeguard, the poison delivery system meant to end a rebellion before it spreads. Silo 17 showed that systems stop cold just by blocking the route the poison travels through, which makes a supposedly fail-proof kill mechanism look surprisingly dependent on one physical choke point. Whether there's a second layer of protection nobody's shown yet is still an open question, and it's worth keeping in that pile rather than treating it as confirmed either way. Old technology carries its own weight problem. George's hard drive predated the rebellion by more than a century, sitting unused for generations, and Allison and George powered it on and pulled readable files off it like it had been stored in a climate-controlled archive last month. The same generosity extends to everything hidden behind the version of technology the public silo gets to see. Judicial surveillance setup, the cleaning helmet's ability to fake an entire landscape for the person wearing it, cameras and cables holding up across generation after generation without visible maintenance. Critical Supply revealed that plenty of parts can't be manufactured inside Silo 18 at all, meaning every replacement has to come from old reserves, which explains some of the durability. It also means the whole system depends on adhesives, seals, and electronics that may have been sitting in storage since before anyone alive was born. The hidden camera network makes that maintenance problem harder to wave off. Season 1 showed cameras built into mirrors and private homes, running for generations without detection. Over that kind of time span, mirrors crack, walls get open for repairs, cables fail, and families renovate. 10,000 people living ordinary lives should create constant opportunities to stumble onto pieces of that network by accident. And keeping it running at all requires parts, power, and technicians who know exactly where the equipment sits. Every one of whom becomes another person who knows what the rest of the population is forbidden to know. The radio network runs on the same problem. Every silo broadcasts on a different frequency. Walker found a way around the restriction, and Silo 1 monitors the whole network from somewhere. Signals still have to travel through rock, metal, and concrete to reach anywhere, and somebody has kept that infrastructure alive across generations, while the general population stays completely unaware other silos even exist. Critical Supply turns the maintenance question into an actual plot. Carla remembered roughly 70 years of grow light stock on hand, with only around 2 years left. That's a huge volume of material missing from a restricted, heavily watched part of the silo, and the logistics of moving that much stock through a building with no elevators should have created a trail of activity for someone to notice well before anyone started asking where it went. It also puts a shelf life on the whole society. Farms depend on parts Silo 18 can't produce internally, and once those parts run out, food production fails behind them. The silo was stocked to survive for generations. The design still comes with an expiration date built in from day one. Then there's the cleaning ritual, which runs on a level of physical precision that doesn't match how fragile every other part of it is. The outside camera relies on a condemned person walking out with a cloth and hoping they wipe the lens before collapsing, refusing, or damaging it, which is a fragile way to maintain the only public window onto the outside world. Juliette eventually proved refusal is possible. The tape sealing each suit somehow fails at close to the same point across different bodies, different suit fits, different amounts of movement and sweat, ritual after ritual, generation after generation, which is either an engineering miracle or evidence that someone controls the outcome more directly than the show has admitted. Allison's arc exposed the same weakness from another angle. She became convinced the cafeteria screen was lying, told Holston she would clean if the outside turned out to be green, walked out, saw exactly what she expected, and cleaned. It gave Holston's grief real weight because he knew what she had promised him. As evidence about the actual outside world, it proved nothing, since Allison already believed the screen inside was compromised before she ever stepped through the door. There's still no clean answer for the cafeteria screen flashing that same green landscape during the Season 1 power outage. The cleaning helmet and the public screen are supposed to run on separate systems, and a power failure somehow routed the exact same false image to both. No later season has explained the connection. It sits there as a clue that never paid off. Juliette's body deserves its own conversation, honestly, because of what it survives across 2 seasons without slowing down. She barely knew how to swim before she was carrying out a deepwater engineering job in Silo 17 using gear she and Solo built from scraps, including an air setup involving a harmonium. Swimming doesn't prepare anyone for controlled depth diving under pressure with improvised equipment, and the dive gave her decompression sickness almost immediately, which Solo treated by sending her back underwater to recompress, an approach connected to real medicine but genuinely dangerous when the diver is inexperienced, injured, and working with homemade gear. Add up everything her body went through across that stretch alone, near drowning more than once. A serious infection, the dive itself, decompression sickness, an arrow wound, continuous climbing and fighting, heavy equipment repair, and a trip back outside. The physical punishment stacks faster than the recovery time between each event can reasonably explain. Knox and Shirley got a smaller version of the same problem with the winch, dropping a serious distance before the mechanism caught them. Even accounting for a rope that holds, their bodies still had to absorb that stop, and the fall should have left them in far worse shape than the show lets it. Season 3's biggest addition to this list might be the memory drug, because it's doing more structural work than almost anything else here. We learned Salvador Quinn used a similar approach in The Water decades ago to slowly erase dangerous knowledge from the population, and the current plan pairs vitamin D with an additional compound to suppress memory across all of Silo 18. Victor Krinkovich, the character overseeing the treatment, describes the mechanism as a drawbridge, something that decides which memories get let through and which get blocked. That suggests some selectivity instead of a blunt chemical wipe across the whole population, which matters because the drug still has to leave people functional. Language, motor skills, job knowledge, and enough of a personal history to keep working alongside their own families all have to survive the process, while the politically dangerous memories don't. Delivering that through the water supply creates its own math problem. People don't drink the same amount. A child and a large adult take in very different doses. Workers doing hard physical labor drink more than everyone else. And illness, dehydration, and individual metabolism all shift how a drug hits a given body. Run that across nearly 10,000 people and you would expect a wide spread of outcomes, not a clean population-wide reset. The show also shifts its own timeline without addressing the shift directly. Quinn's version worked gradually, over weeks, months, and years. The current plan is framed as a fast emergency response to an active crisis. A stronger formula or a heavier dose could close that gap. And it is worth noting the drug has already been refined and reused multiple times across the Silo's history, based on how casually other characters have asked to be sedated by it in earlier seasons. Even so, the show hasn't shown its work on how urgency and precision line up. There's also a small detail worth flagging for later. The barrels shown earlier in the show carry clear labels, while some of the barrels near the water system in Season 3 don't match that labeling. It might mean nothing. It might connect to everything going on with critical supply. For now, it stays in the unresolved pile until a future episode actually does something with it. Which raises the timing question, because Season 4 is already locked in as the final chapter. Showrunner Graham Yost has confirmed it, premiering summer 2027 and closing out the adaptation of Hugh Howey's full trilogy. Apple committed to that 4-season structure early, which is why Seasons 3 and 4 were filmed back-to-back rather than years apart, and why Season 3's split timeline, pulling from the Shift prequel material, is already setting up whatever Dust brings to the final season. Yost has described the show as running on its own internal logic rather than strict real-world timing, treating 350 years of separation between storylines as something the writers can move through freely because Silo, in his framing, doesn't map onto real time in any strict way. That's a useful lens for everything on this list, even if it explains the priorities more than it forgives the gaps. The writer's room has consistently chosen story momentum over showing its work on physical logistics, and a final season locked in this early gives them real room to close out what's still sitting unresolved instead of letting it pile up indefinitely, which loops back to where this started. Distance is supposed to mean something in Silo. It isolates people, decides who gets to talk to whom, and turns a staircase into the entire political structure of an underground city. Every rule the show has spent 3 seasons building around scarcity, power, and control depends on distance actually costing something. Juliette crossing 424 floors in a single day while stopping for conversation is the same rule the rest of the Silo runs on, bent just enough that once you notice it in one place, you start noticing it everywhere else too.